It is day 207 of the second Trump administration, and in just hours from now, Donald Trump will get on a plane to Alaska to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. It will be the first time Putin has set foot on U.S. soil in over a decade. Well, today, the White House announced that the summit will start with a one-on-one meeting, then wider group talks, followed by a joint press conference. A White House official says the American group will include Marco Rubio and Steve Witkoff. Earlier this week, the White House said this would be a listening exercise for the president. Well, here's what the president had to say about that very thing today. Watch this.
All I want to do is set the table for the next meeting, which should happen shortly. I'd like to see it happen very quickly, very shortly after this meeting. We're going to find out where everybody stands, and I'll know within the first 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, or 5 minutes, like we tend to find out, whether or not we're going to have a good meeting or a bad meeting. And if it's a bad meeting, it'll end very quickly. And if it's a good meeting, we're going to end up getting peace in the pretty near future.
Meanwhile, we are now several days into Trump's takeover of Washington, D.C., and all 800 National Guard troops that have now been deployed to that city. Today, the chief of Washington Police issued an order that will increase the department's cooperation with immigration officials, a move that the president praised. Officers making traffic stops will now be allowed to contact ICE about any undocumented immigrants they may encounter. This afternoon, the president said without evidence that crime numbers are already dropping in the city. He also said the stats showing crime in Washington was at its lowest level in years. He said those stats, they were phony, and that the people behind them are now under investigation. With that, let's get smarter with the help of our lead-off panel tonight. NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard is here. Sam Stein, managing editor for The Bulwark and MSNBC political contributor. And Dave Weigel joins us, political reporter for Semaphore. Mr. Hilliard, you are the one who spends the most time with this president, so you get to go first. It sounds like the White House and Moscow are already downplaying expectations ahead of tomorrow. What are you hearing about this meeting?
The fact here is, Stephanie, I go back to a conversation I had with a senior U.S. official this last weekend, and my question was, who is going to be attending this meeting with the president? Is this a true one-on-one meeting, as the Kremlin is now claiming? And that senior U.S. official told me that they were unaware of what the manifest was going to be. And now sources tell NBC the suggestion is that Secretary of State Marco Rubio, as well as Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, will be going on the trip as well. But the Kremlin is claiming that this is, in fact, going to be a one-on-one meeting that includes interpreters. And the fact is, the stakes of this meeting, 3.5 years into this war, are so high, and the president of the United States has not articulated over the course of his presidency and as a candidate a recognition of the regions that are at play. It is being suggested that the president is not going to go in and try to negotiate territorial swaps, but he's already publicly talked that Ukraine may have to cede some land. But we have never heard the president a single time go into specifics about any of these regions. And you already know that Vladimir Putin is coming in with keen intentions. The president has already set 2 deadlines previously this year for him to go into a ceasefire. And that those deadlines came and went with Putin facing no consequences. And now this White House is hoping to get a ceasefire tomorrow. It just begs to question exactly what the president, in terms of demands, is going to present to Putin.
Well, Putin is already starting with the flattery, right? He called Trump's efforts towards peace energetic and sincere. So is Trump's recent, frustration with Putin, is that going to be on hold when they meet up? Because Donald Trump, Sam, is known to talk a big game, a fighting game, a tough game when the other person isn't in the room. But as soon as they're there, he gets all sweet and warm again.
Yeah, and I think Putin is very aware of this. There's been reports, for instance, that Putin's going to come with an agenda that would sweeten the economic pot for Donald Trump, knowing fully well that Trump loves business deals in which he can come home and claim, I got billions of dollars or access to Russian oil, and look at that. It's a victory for the United States. So Putin is aware of what makes Trump turn. He's also aware that Trump is openly thirsty for a Nobel Peace Prize. I think he's going to probably play off of that as well. And so you can expect that this is going to be a summit of flattery by Putin. Whether or not that ends up in some sort of diplomatic agreement is obviously to be determined. It's hard to see something being finalized when Ukraine isn't at the table. And certainly the White House has now begun to at least acknowledge the fact that they're going to have to talk to the Ukrainians after this. But it's hard to imagine that Trump will go to Alaska only to turn around. And it's hard to imagine that Putin will go to Alaska without an agenda that involves flattering the president who likes to be flattered.
Okay, but Dave, financial incentives for Trump, business opportunities. Could Donald Trump quickly forget priorities to protect Ukraine if he walks in and Putin has some sort of business opportunity for him?
Well, that's possible, though the president also seemed to suggest that there might be something America could trade for peace. It's been unclear what he wants, except as the panel was saying, a quick end to the war and a prize for himself for ending it. So that gives Putin tons of room to negotiate with Trump. And I've found, just in looking at what the Trump base is focused on, it's not as concerned with whether he gets a deal with Ukraine. This was an issue during the campaign. It brought people into his coalition. You look at the people who were most focused on that in the campaign, like Tulsi Gabbard, they have other projects now. They're not cracking their heads every day about how to solve this problem. They're reinvestigating the 2016 election. So politically, domestically, this has not become a problem for him the way that dealing with Ukraine was a problem for Joe Biden, not with his base.
Vaughn, some folks are worried that Donald Trump is going to give up too much in a push to end this war because he really, really wants this Nobel Peace Prize. What do you make of that?
We've seen him articulate that he wants this Nobel Peace Prize. This is somebody who, when one lacks a clear understanding of the history, as he referred to not St. Petersburg, but as its previous name from more than 35 years ago in a social media post yesterday, I think that there is serious questions about what the president has in terms of what he feels worthy of fighting on behalf of Ukraine for, right? That is why you have seen European allies travel and meet directly with Zelensky and insist on having this meeting yesterday with the president of the United States remotely, out of that deep concern that the president could very well walk into this meeting and make deep concessions. Because as a candidate on the campaign trail in 2024, and with Zelensky sitting right next to him in the Oval Office in February, he repeatedly suggested that the major Ukrainian cities were all but demolished, and they were lost hopes. And so when you're walking into a room with Vladimir Putin with that as your perspective of Ukraine and its future, it calls into serious question whether he believes that a, quote, peace deal is worthy it for himself, regardless of what it actually means for the future of Ukraine.
All right, Sam, let's move on to a new topic. Attorney General Pam Bondi has ordered the D.C. mayor to now recognize the head of the DEA as the emergency police commissioner. What do we need to know about this?
Yeah, this is a serious escalation as I read it. This is just breaking news over the past hour or so. As you had noted earlier in the read, there had been some overtures by the DC police to loosen the restrictions on their ability to collaborate with ICE. This blows past that. This basically says the DC police chief is now not in charge. The DEA, head of the DEA, will be in charge, and they are going to try to supersede the DC council law that makes DC a sanctuary city. The immediate reaction has been, can they do this? Is this a violation of the actual Home Rule Act that does give the president 30 days of national emergency authority, but doesn't say anything specific about overriding DC council law? And so this, look, if you had fears about Trump taking advantage of this and taking over the police and trying to run the city, this is affirmation of those fears. We'll have to see how the mayor's office responds to this. They could sue. We'll see if that's actually what's happened, because as we've seen, Mayor Bowser has been somewhat reluctant to be confrontational with Trump about this stuff. But it's a very tense time, honestly, in Washington, D.C. I mean, the city is a little bit on edge over this. There's a notable police presence, obviously, in the Capitol. Not clear exactly what they're doing. You see their images of them just walking the monuments. But they're clearly there for show, and now it looks like they're there to usurp force as well.